Republican Seniors of Minnesota. We bring seniors 50 plus together.
Learn about and discuss issues that are important to Minnesotans. Hear from our elected officials and experts on public policy.
Meet political candidates, elect delegates to district and state conventions, and help elect Republicans to office at all levels.
We believe in and advocate for the principles of personal responsibility, economic prosperity, peace through strong national defense,
and limited, sensible government. Republican Seniors of Minnesota. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Welcome. A special welcome to those attending our video live stream, which is on. I'm Carol Brumwell. I'm chair of the Republican Seniors of Minnesota. I'm your MC for this meeting. This meeting is being live streamed today. It's also being recorded by our volunteers. We'll be ending the formal part of our meeting early today, so you'll have time to renew your membership, go to our book table, and also celebrate together the joy of the election. A few quick meeting courtesy reminders. Please silence your cell phones. If you have a conversation that needs to happen, please take it out those east doors and close the doors so it doesn't disturb the meeting. In the room, please whisper. And if you have a comment to make, please wait for the microphone to reach you. Despite the size of the room and your booming voice, we need the microphone in order for everybody to be able to hear you. The area that's closest to the beverage table there, the first two chairs in, are off camera. So if you're handed the microphone, please have the courtesy to move a little closer to the center so people can see as well as hear you on the video. Sound check. Is everybody able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. If for some reason you're not able to hear, please wave your hand. Mike Lehman, our past chair here, is monitoring sound and can work on adjusting the sound. Please join me for an opening prayer. God of peace, we invite you to preside over this meeting. Bless our speakers this day. Help them to communicate clearly the wisdom they have to share. We thank you for our veterans who left home and family to serve and who are now returned to us. Grant them peace of mind and certainty of our gratitude. Please be with each of us and with our friends and neighbors who may have supported other political candidates. Even if we have different opinions, give us unity of spirit to bring healing and strength to our nation. Help both them and us to listen politely as others share their points of view. We pray for those in government office. Help them make laws to protect our freedoms so that we can live peaceful, quiet lives in godliness and dignity. We pray for the judges across our land, from the local level to the high courts. Help them to judge wisely and fairly. Please give them wisdom and discernment to balance justice and mercy. Help us to see in all others the gifts they are employing to carry out your will. May we have a spirit of camaraderie in this room and as we work together on our shared mission. Amen. We'd like to acknowledge our military and veterans and our active or retired police officers and first responders. Will those people please stand to be recognized? Thank you. Now, will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Be seated. We'll have time at the very end of our meeting for 30-second announcements from those of you who are attending who have something that you need to say. You're welcome to stay in the room for conversation after the meeting. We have the room until noon today. The board has set membership yearly dues for 2025. The new rates are $25 for individual, $40 for a couple. Meeting fees are staying at $5 for members, $10 for non-members. You may renew today, renew by mail, and we will continue collecting 2025 dues in January. We need some additional help for our Republican seniors. If you would be willing to serve, please see me. We can still use 4 additional volunteers to connect with the chair and executive teams of each congressional district. We need connections to CDs 1, 4, 5, and 8. So if you're in one of those CDs and willing to serve on their executive team as a connection to Republican seniors, please see me. On your own from home, we need 1 or 2 people willing to do about 6 hours of computer lookups and data entry. We want to capture the Republican legislators who were newly reelected and get their campaign email addresses. They're not allowed to receive our communications at their official state addresses, so we want to capture those campaign email addresses and reach out to them. Please consider now and in January whether you're willing to serve on our board of directors. We do have some board members who will not be able to run. They've reached their term limits, and so we're going to be recruiting new board members, and Mike Lehman will be chairing that nominations committee. We'll be electing new board members in April next year. As 2024 ends, we are still looking for volunteers to join us at the Republican Party of Minnesota offices. That's at the corner of 494 and 100. We meet on the 3rd Thursday mornings from 9:30 to 11:30 there to stuff envelopes of receipts. Generous donors to the party need to get their receipts so they can get their political campaign contributions reimbursed. That is, the next 2 Thursdays are November 21st and December 19th. And then in 2025, the timing of those envelope stuffing parties will change a little bit, and I'll announce those when we have those dates. A word about campaigns. You know, statewide, Minnesota Republican re-elections in the outreaches were very successful. New elections for our new candidates here in the inner suburbs, not so successful, unfortunately. We continue to work to move the needle and appreciate everyone who supported a candidate. Thanks to all of those who served the campaign in some way, and I'm going to ask for quick shows of hand. The Republican Party said, well, so how active is your affiliate? And I have some questions to ask. How many of you hosted a campaign yard sign? Okay, virtually everybody in the room who wasn't in a condo had a campaign yard sign. Were you on a candidate's core campaign team? Probably, look at the number. That's what, 10? Thank you. Did you send text messages on behalf of a candidate? Oh, quite a few more of us figured out how to do that. Did you make phone calls on behalf of a candidate? Look at the number in the room. That's what, 15, 20? Thank you. Did you contribute financially to a candidate? Whoa, look at that. Wonderful, wonderful help from our seniors. Did you get this Trump Force 47 training? And did you door knock or make phone calls? Look at that. Yeah, it was an experience working with the core Trump team in Minnesota. Did you make ballot chase phone calls or visits? A couple. Did you serve as an election judge? Look at that. Wonderful. And did anybody here serve as a poll challenger? A couple. Thank you. And how many of us are happy to no longer be getting campaign texts and emails? Whoa! Thank you for your contributions to the success of the campaigns. Yes, Loris.
Where does Minnesota stand in comparison to other states in the country in having a seniors club?
I don't know. That's a very good question. He asked, where do we stand as comparison to other states in the country of having a seniors club? I know ours is one of the largest affiliates here in Minnesota, but I'll ask that question. Thank you very much. And now for our featured speaker, Edward Welsch will discuss with us the real right and Trump's America. Edward Welsch is the executive editor of Chronicles magazine, a magazine of American culture. The Charlemagne Institute also publishes an online daily intellectual takeout. Ed was previously a journalist covering the financial markets and energy industry for the Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg News from bureaus in Washington, D.C., New York, and Calgary. He was also editor of financial newsletters. He's an undergraduate of St. Olaf College and a student of its Great Books program. Mr. Welsch holds a master's degree in journalism and communication from Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. Please join me in welcoming Edward Welsch.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to speak to the Minnesota Republican seniors, especially in the week after perhaps the greatest election victory in all our lifetimes. Both the left and the never-Trumpers threw the kitchen sink at Donald Trump to try and prevent him from becoming president, and he defeated them all. I just want to go through a short list of some of the things he faced, starting from the moment he rode down that escalator. The Russiagate scandal was an attempt by Hillary Clinton to undermine him. It was picked up by the media. It was picked up by the never-Trumpers, and we never heard the end of how he was secretly an agent of Russia. Total nonsense. The All Good People scandal, in which the media falsely portrayed Trump as having supported white supremacists in Charlottesville, just blatantly took his comments out of context to try and frame him as a white supremacist and a fascist. The suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story during the 2020 election and the suppression of any media that tried to report on that. That could have changed the election decisively in favor of Trump, and the media, Facebook, all the social media companies cracked down to stop that from being, the truth about that being told. The stolen 2020 election, I happen to believe it was stolen. You can have a different opinion about that. Maybe he didn't run the best election in 2020, but he didn't have an overwhelming enough numbers to stop the steal, but I believe it was stolen. And the persecution and disbarment of Trump's lawyers who tried to expose the Democratic Party's fraud. The January 6th insurrection narrative, in which mostly peaceful protesters, truly mostly peaceful protesters at the Capitol, were rounded up and treated like terrorists. Meanwhile, the mostly violent leftist protests by Black Lives Matter and Antifa across cities, across the country, in which actual terrorists were bailed out of prison or given slaps on the wrist by Democratic prosecutors. Trump's felony conviction and the relentless lawfare attacks that attempted to impoverish and imprison him. 2 assassination attempts, which he miraculously survived, perhaps 3 now if this Iranian story is real. And this is just a short list of the left's attempts to destroy President Trump. And that's to say nothing, unfortunately, of the establishment right's attempt to destroy him. Trump was also betrayed by the neoconservatives who filled his first administration. Men such as John Bolton, Douglas Feith, and Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, who last month outrageously called his former boss a fascist as part of a coordinated and failed October surprise against the Trump administration, as if they thought, let's just call him a fascist again. Maybe that will work. He was also opposed by former members of the Bush administration like Dick Cheney, Liz Cheney, well, she wasn't Liz Cheney's daughter, Condoleezza Rice, and George W. Bush himself, and the more than 100 former Republicans who endorsed Kamala Harris. Many neoconservatives who were part of the Republican Party in prior decades are now members of the Democratic Party. They've flipped almost seamlessly, which makes one ask the question, what kind of conservatives really were the leaders of the Republican Party over the prior 2 decades? In Trump's re-election, something more significant has happened than just a man overcoming the odds and betrayal by a cadre of former Republicans. Trump has changed the character of the Republican Party perhaps forever. So what I'm going to try to do in this short talk today is just describe how the Republican Party has changed and provide some historical context for that. Before I do that, however, I'll tell you just a little bit about myself and about the magazine I work for, which will be relevant to the change of the Republican Party that I'm going to describe. As noted before, I'm Minnesota born and raised. I was a journalist. I worked for about 10 years for the Wall Street Journal. I worked for it in Washington, D.C., and I worked for it in New York during the financial crisis. After the financial crisis, I went to Canada to cover the Keystone XL pipeline. I was always a conservative, but I kept it under wraps because I knew felt drawn as my vocation to go in an industry that was filled with leftists. So I felt that going into business journalism was the best way to keep that under wraps and not have my career derailed by leftists. But, I kind of imbibed sort of libertarianism and became very steeped in libertarianism. And that became my ideology during those years while I worked for the Wall Street Journal. It was really in the years up just around when Trump emerged and before, when I saw all the racial unrest in Ferguson and what happened in Charlottesville, I really started feeling like libertarianism doesn't have an answer for the cultural changes that are affecting this country, and I was looking for something else. For the last 6 years, I've been executive editor of Chronicles magazine. Chronicles is a political and literary journal which was founded in 1977 out of Rockford College in Rockford, Illinois. The founding editor was Leopold Tiermand, who was an emigre from communist Poland. And Tiermand founded it with the president of Rockford College, John Howard. And by the way, we are monthly magazine published for the last 47 years. You can find us at Borders and Books A Million and Barnes & Noble. And you can also read the magazine online at www.chroniclesmagazine.org, and you can subscribe for $80 a year, and I encourage you to do that, of course. But the magazine has been around since 1977, and the original idea, Leopold Tiermand, when he fled communist Poland, he felt that cultural communism or cultural Marxism was becoming a problem in America even as far back as 1977. And he founded Chronicles because he wanted it to be, when he first moved to America, he was a writer in Poland. He started writing for The New Yorker, and he was disturbed by The New Yorker being left-wing. He wanted a right-wing version of New Yorker, because long before Andrew Breitbart said politics is downstream from culture, that was the motto of Chronicles magazine. Chronicles, a magazine of American culture. They wanted to critique the culture from the right to defeat the prevailing leftist narrative. So the magazine has always reviewed books, it's always reviewed films and cultural happenings. Around the time that the magazine started growing up in the 80s and 90s, neoconservatives were being embraced by the Republican Party and began to dominate the opinion journals of the time. most prominently National Review and Commentary, which were really around that time. National Review, Commentary, Human Events, and Chronicles were all kind of peers and debating partners, and really friendly. We had the same events. Chronicles used to run an award program called the Ingersoll Awards. It was sort of like for decades, it was like the conservative version of the Pulitzer Prize. It would give out literature for conservative literature, and the same group of people, of these neoconservative publications would convene in Rockford, Illinois for black tie dinners, and we were all friends back in those days. But the neoconservatives were former Trotskyite communists who had become disaffected by Stalin and the Soviet Union. The prominent commentary columnist Irving Kristol was the founder of the neoconservative movement, in that he gave it its first name. And he famously defined a neoconservative is a liberal who has been mugged by reality. These liberals, now calling themselves conservatives, were first embraced by National Review's Bill Buckley and the Reagan-era Republicans in an environment in which the Soviet Union was the greatest existential threat to America, under the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So even though the neoconservatives were now conservatives, there were still liberals at heart, I think it's fair to say. When they joined the American conservative movement, they started to redefine what conservatism meant in the post-World War II era, and they introduced some elements of their old communist faith. One major attribute was an internationalist focus. While communists were driven by a desire to spread Marxism across the globe, the neoconservatives had a corresponding desire to spread liberal democracy across the globe, which played out, after their conversion. They embraced wholeheartedly liberal democracy in its internationalist aspect. And this played out for about 30 years of pointless regime change operations in the Middle East and elsewhere, when neoconservatives dominated the administrations of the Bushes and the Republican Party after the Bushes. The internationalist focus of the neoconservatives also meant they embraced global capitalism and promoted economic policies that benefited America's multinationalist corporations to the detriment of the American people, especially in America's heartland, which saw its industrial base hollowed out. The internationalist focus also meant that the neoconservatives cared little for borders or the cultural integrity of the American people. After all, they wanted to make the entire world American. If America becomes the entire world, so much the better. The writer Steve Saylor encapsulated this viewpoint in his summation of the neoconservative project as to invade the world and to invite the world. Furthermore, though the first generations of neoconservatives were socially conservative, later generations embraced wokeness, which shows how social conservatism is not fundamental to the neoconservative program, and they can exploit or abandon social conservatives as it is convenient to them. And that was a feature of the George W. Bush administration. The fact that the Bush-era neoconservative program has left the newly MAGA Republican Party and found a new home in the Democratic Party is another indication that there is nothing truly fundamentally conservative about the neoconservative program. Bill Buckley, who became a neoconservative himself and whose magazine National Review was a headquarters for the neoconservative movement for decades, had a definition of conservatism as, famously, he said, someone who stands athwart history yelling stop. I'll argue that that's a bad definition of conservatism. It's reactive to the liberal program. It acts only as a brake that temporarily checks liberal progress. In fact, this trend in American conservative goes back even earlier than neoconservatism. The 19th century theologian Robert Louis Dabney criticized this kind of conservatism. He said, American conservatives, he said, quote, is merely the shadow that follows radicalism as it moves toward perdition. Real conservatism, then, was redefined by Chronicles during the battles it started to have with the neoconservatives in the 1990s, and they adopted the term paleoconservatism paleoconservatism as a way to contrast the neoconservative program. It's also called the old right in the pre-World War II era, or you could just call it the real right or real conservatism. Real conservatism doesn't just merely halt the progress of liberalism, yelling stop. It pushes back in the opposite direction. And luckily, the Trump administration, I think, is going to do that. It pushes back in the opposite direction against liberal egalitarianism. True conservatism is about embracing authority and hierarchy. It pushes back against the liberal program for open borders and diversity, and it promotes the preservation of national culture and only allows immigration if the newcomers assimilate into American culture and do not disrupt the communities they join. It pushes back against laissez-faire international capitalism. It regulates economic and financial activity to benefit American small businesses and families, if necessary, using tariffs, just as the Trump administration is proposing. It is against social liberalism and moral decay. It defends traditional morality and religion, and it will curb free speech against pernicious errors like pornography and other social degeneration that can destroy societies from within. So because Chronicles, the magazine I work for, has always promoted true conservatism, it wasn't long before the magazine and the magazine and the neoconservatives came into conflict. It started really in 1989 when Commentary magazine, its current editor then Norman Podhoretz, criticized Chronicles as nativists after an issue in 1989, if you can think about it, in which the then editor Thomas Fleming predicted that unchecked immigration was to become a huge problem for America. At the time, Chronicles had a sister project, a magazine that was just developing called First Things, which you may be familiar with. It's a Catholic magazine that still exists today. First Things was based in New York, and it was run by the then Lutheran pastor Richard John Newhouse. And during the 1889, Norman Podhoretz wrote a letter to Newhouse saying, quote, "Have you seen the latest issue of Chronicles? It contains many abominations, including a piece of nativist bigotry by the editor himself. In any case, I know an enemy when I see them, and Chronicles has become just that so far as I am personally concerned. And I would hope so far as any decent conservative of any stripe is concerned as well." And this was simply for pointing out that unchecked immigration could change the character of the country and was something that needed to be conservatives should address. So really after that happened, paleoconservatives were drummed out of the mainstream conservative movement and pilloried for not only for their supposed nativism, but their lack of support for the neoconservative foreign wars. In the words of the former George W. Bush speechwriter David Frum, who's now the editor of The Atlantic, he wrote a piece called Unpatriotic Conservatives, in which he attacked everyone associated with Chronicles for criticizing the Iraq War and not buying into the weapons of mass destruction hoax. Because of its criticism of immigration, they were called nativists and racists. This was the prevailing state of things from the 1990s until the emergence of Trump in 2015. That year, Rush Limbaugh held up an issue of Chronicles magazine in his hand and told his audience that he had found a writer who had explained Trump's Make America Great Again movement. The then-deceased Chronicles columnist Sam Francis had predicted that a president would eventually rise up to challenge the neoconservative domination of the Republican Party and gather around him so-called middle American radicals, by which Sam Francis meant normal Americans, or what Hillary Clinton calls deplorables. So whether he knows it or not, Trump is following the paleoconservative policies that have been advocated by Chronicles for 4 decades. The people he's putting in his second administration appear to share those beliefs as well. This is an enormously encouraging situation. Yet the danger will always remain that the Trump administration will be sidetracked, that it will be infiltrated again by the neoconservative agenda, or that it will fall back into the flow of mainstream liberal culture. It's difficult to swim against the stream of prevailing liberalism, and it's almost impossible unless one is guided by a North Star of true conservatism. So I think that our job, the job of the real conservative during the next 4 years, is to hold the Trump administration up to those standards. And we intend to do that at Chronicles, and I hope you'll join us. So thanks for listening to my speech, and I'll take any questions if you have them.
All right, I was instructed to push nothing, so that's one of the important instructions here, I guess. The question that I have for you, and I'm trying to decide where I fall on the spectrum, but should there be any concessions on the issue of abortion? Because the Democrats raise it repeatedly and repeatedly and repeatedly, and I even brought it up with a recreational group that I belong to. And I said, should we go with a society where abortion is allowed for 12 weeks? And they pilloried me over it. And if I bring it up with a conservative group, I would be pilloried over that too, in deciding where I stand. Should there be concessions or not?
I think this is a prudential judgment for each individual constituency. You should always, I think any conservative should say abortion is wrong. It's a moral wrong and it's evil. What Trump has done in pushing it to the states, I think is prudent, because that what can be done. If he made abortion the key of the 2024 campaign, as it was during the midterm election, which he failed so bad. I mean, he got beat so badly during his first midterm as president, partially because Roe v. Wade was passed. I don't think he would be president today. So, look, it is an absolute moral evil that we should fight, but you have to make prudential judgments for your different ridings. You can't do the same thing here in Minnesota that you could do in Texas or Kentucky.
Yes. Edward, thank you very much. Excuse me. Thank you very much for listing what has taken place over the last decades and several decades. My question is, what media form is going to emerge as prominent now? It looks like the written word may be sliding into the background now that we...
Hold on for a minute.
It isn't. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. What form of media do you think is going to be dominant as we go forward? It looks like it isn't going to be the written word, but it's going to be these sound bites, these podcasts, it's whatever. I'd like to get your opinion on that.
Well, I think that's true. You're absolutely right. I mean, I was going to say video, but it's not even video anymore. It's short video. It's TikTok and YouTube Shorts, which are awful. I mean, they're incredibly addicting. If you have them on your phone, you can scroll and scroll and scroll. You'll learn nothing. You actually feel depleted after consuming that media, and you learn nothing. So the written word is not the dominant form of media anymore, but that has been the case for most of human history. But it will always be the most important form of media for the elite, the thinkers, the people who change things, the people who have ideas, and it's really just that minority of elite which determines the course of human events. So I'm not worried about it. The people who come to meetings like this, who think about politics, who form their opinions, these are an organized minority will always dominate a disorganized majority. So I'm not worried about it. Chronicles has about, people who pay for the magazine is about 10,000 nationwide. We have about 1.2 million readers per year. But the people who pay for it are just about 10,000. And that's the case with a lot of political journals. First Things, National Review are also in the 5 digits as well. And it's kind of always been that way. So you're right, but don't worry about it and stay off the phone.
How do we preserve and develop our culture given our public education system?
It's a great question. Well, the good thing is that COVID undermined that public education system, and more people are homeschooling. And I think competition is a good thing. And if you saw the news just recently, apparently Trump is going to disband the federal education system. Thank God for that. If he does that, he'll manage to do what Reagan said he was going to do and never did. If you were to devolve, good conservative principle is distributism, where these decisions should be made as the local level as possible. There's no reason to have education policy dictated from the national level. Put it down to the states, and you'll have a laboratory of different approaches. And you'll have, I would imagine, in the South, more fully red states, they would come up with some approaches to preserve American culture, and those would be the model. You'd see people move to those states to raise their kids.
We see that the Democrats are really good at coalescing, really good at creating a big tent to bring a lot of different interest groups in. What I understand that you're telling us is that there now is going to be a competition between the paleos and the neos, and probably there's a third group somewhere. That doesn't sound very favorable, but I'm sure that there's a way that we can get all of these groups together. What advice do you have for fitting all of the various permutations of conservatism in a friendly way into a Republican Party?
That's very important. And, I work for a political journal which espouses a particular kind of viewpoint, which I would say, we have the right view of history, the neoconservatives are wrong and others and all this, but the truth is we have to kind of get along, even with the neoconservatives, and try to convert them over to our view. And look, Trump won by building a big party. He has a record number of minorities voting for him from all different classes. I think, some of the most ever in history for a Republican, or most in many years for various minority classes. He's got a bunch of former left-wingers. I mean, you have a bunch of former union members who used to be Democrats who are voting for him, but also just on the punditry level, you have a bunch of left-wingers who have joined him. I mean, look at the transformation of someone like Candace Owens, who used to be on the left, or Dave Rubin, who used to be part of the Young Turks on the left, and now they're on the right. Now, Dave Rubin is homosexual who's adopted 2 kids and all that kind of stuff, and as a social conservative I think, well, that's not great, but at the end of the day, this is a coalition which is wide enough to win. And I think it's important to do that as a practical, prudential matter, while still holding your principles and trying to change the culture towards your principles as much as possible, without being an ideologue who just can't get along with anybody who's not pure. We don't want to get into a purity spiral and get into a bunker and say the whole world is going to hell. That was kind of the attitude of the paleoconservatives for many years. So we can't do that. And I think Trump is doing it now. He's built that big tent. So.
Does your magazine address anything regarding the religious climate of today, since the religious community became a real instrument in this recent election? And so does it address that at all? Because it seems like that is falling more and more in the background. And so I'm just curious if it does.
Absolutely. I mean, the magazine has always been. It promotes. We're not espousing any particular denomination or another. Two of our editors have been Jews. The other longest editor was a traditionalist Catholic. I'm a traditionalist Catholic. Other editors have been Protestants. But all of them have felt that traditional religion is important. And we've done a number of stories about, we did a story in September of last year called The Great Apostasy, just looking at the latest data about how many people are losing the faith and how much those who practice the faith are embracing sort of social progressivism, which is really contrary to the gospel of Christianity. So, yeah, absolutely, that's a huge topic focus for us. If you're going to cover American culture, you have to cover religion, because American culture is one of the most religious cultures in the world.
I just want to know, how can we work together to brainstorm how to reach out to people who are extreme leftists and not Marxists and calling us haters, and how do we reach out to people like that and help them to see that our country is going to be another Weimar Republic financially? I don't know how we're going to survive.
I think the mistake is to try to adopt the leftist frame too much and to try to be acceptable to the left. The best way we can do it is what's happening now, by winning. If you look at what's happening, if you watch CNN or MSNBC or others, they're doing soul searching right now because the majority of the country is against them. They're going to have to move right. The left is going to have to move right. The defeat that the left has had in this election has been devastating to them, and they cannot talk it away. They can't say, oh, look, every single branch of government is now Republican. The country went against them. They can't just call everybody fascist anymore. They can't push wokeism. So you just, look at Trump's rallies. They tried to frame it like there was some kind of, Hitler kind of rallies, angry people or whatever. It was so obvious over the last 8 years. Those rallies are full of joyful people who are winning. That Trump phrase, winning, is a brilliant one. Just do your own thing and don't try to pander to the left too much. They're reality, mugged by reality. Irving Kristol's phrase. Let them be mugged by reality.
Edward, I thank you very much for being here, and your message today has been very inspirational. So I took out my phone and subscribed to your magazine to join one of the 10,000.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And by the way, I brought a bunch of copies, so they're back there somewhere, the last 3 months, and you can all pick one up. Please just take one, because I think I might have just one for everybody here, but that's about it. So, anyway, is there any more?
Just close to your mouth. Children are being victimized by the progressive ideology, and it's heartbreaking. Do you have any ideas about how to quickly protect the children that are being encouraged to pick a gender?
I mean, it's absolutely terrible. We've done a number of stories about that, just horror stories of. Now I've forgotten the name of the guy in Texas who his wife is sort of a left winger and transitioned him against his will. But there are a number of stories like that. And these people who go through these gender transitions as children, they have some of the highest suicide rates among any medical patients, above people who have schizophrenia or other mental illnesses. It's absolutely terrible. The only thing I can say is, the only thing we try to do at the magazine is just highlight the horror stories. We do it every few months. We write a story about it, and I can only hope that legislation is passed to hold the parents accountable who do that. If you do that to your child, you should be held accountable, And I think that's about it. We have to make that a crime. You shouldn't be able to do that to a child before they come of age.
Bill Maher had a recent discussion, I'm trying to remember who it was, about the mutilization of children. And could you maybe speak to Bill Maher and the movement he's making and how that might relate to some of the questions we're asking?
I don't know about Bill Maher, so I don't know if I can answer that question. I don't follow Bill Maher. As far as Bill Maher. Bill Maher, I think, fits into a number. If you want to elaborate on what you said.
I'm fine for it now.
Okay. So if Bill Maher fits into a number, one of these left-wingers who have been mugged by reality or have moved in they at least, I don't think Bill Maher, it's fair to say, gosh, this is a future Republican or conservative. I don't think that will ever happen to Bill Maher. But he stop supporting the left because they went so woke on all this stuff. And that's a good thing for the country because it shows that over the next 4 years, the Democrats are going to have to get there, totally revamp what they're doing and become a more rational party again. So we should never think that, oh, God, Bill Maher is an ally, future Republican ally of the right. But he is symptomatic of the fact that the Democrats, when they come around another 4 and 8 years, are not going to be pushing this stuff anymore. The woke stuff is going away, including the pushing the transgender surgery stuff. And they're going to have to, otherwise they'll never get elected again. Which, that's fine with me.
I didn't really formulate this question very well, but could you speak to the issue of some children or adult children or, this whole idea of if you have a family member who voted for Trump, don't have anything to do with them?
That has been devastating. That was my experience as well. I was always the conservative, but I went to St. Olaf. Most of my college friends, I would say, were liberal. I lost all my friends after I came out. I went for Trump. I lost all my friends. I had to make new friends, and that was the case for a lot of people as well. But I think that is changing. I think it's just resolving itself. It was kind of like the question I answered for the other person. We can't pander to the left and say, oh gosh, I'm so hurt by losing these friends, I'm going to change who I am. You actually just have to stay the course and win. And that's what we've done, thank God. So I don't think you're going to see that kind of nonsense anymore. It's over. We won, that's the message. So let's just make sure that we take as much ground as possible over the next 4 years.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. I really appreciate it. It's been a great pleasure.
In closing, our next meeting is January 14th. We do not meet in December. Our featured speaker has changed from previously announced. Previously announced was Jim Schultz. In January, it will be Adam Vhoff of Turning Point USA. Our first speaker will be Boyman Freeman, who's the Senior Financial Fraud Investigator for the Minnesota Department of Commerce. He'll be speaking on the topic of avoiding online and telephone scams. As you get your 2025 calendars, please mark them with our 2025 meeting dates. We'll continue to meet on the second Tuesday of the month at 10 o'clock here. There were little cards that should be on your table. Otherwise, there are additional ones at the back with those dates. If you're like me and you can't really calculate second Tuesdays, I just want to know the day. Are there guests or first-time visitors today who would like to introduce themselves? We have a couple here. Yvonne, microphone here, please. Here, up a table. Would you raise your hands again, please, so Yvonne can find you? Oh. Name and city, please.
Marie Merriam, Bloomington.
Thank you, Marie. And?
Charlene Gaiman, Minnetonka. She drugged me along today, just saying.
Thank you. Thank you. Demonstrating what we want you to do is bring a friend when you come here. Are there other guests or first-time visitors who would like to announce their name and town? No one else. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. Hope to see you again in January. I have a couple events up here at the podium. The first one is this Friday, November 15th. The Minnesota Republican Women are hosting a fundraiser in St. Paul at the Doubletree Hotel on Burns Avenue from 6 to 10 p.m. They're calling it the Red Ball Event. It's a dinner, silent auction, live auction, speakers, entertainment, the whole 9 yards. And tickets start at $125. They are still available. They particularly asked me to announce this today. The Red Ball Event is the website. Altogether, theredballevent.com. Tonight in Apple Valley, we have SD 56 hosting a campaign volunteers thank you gathering at the Back Alley Tavern at Bogart's. That's in Garrett Avenue in Apple Valley from 5:30 to 7:30. Admission is free and donations are accepted. Chuck, you have another event announcement?
Okay, Jim Schultz is tentatively set for March now, so mark that one. He's one of those candidates who lost and came back and is fighting harder. And it's important for any candidates that did lose the first time. You've got name recognition. You do much better the second time, so encourage people to run again. But for you, those of you that were looking forward to Jim Schultz, if nothing else goes wrong, he'll be here in March.
Thank you. November is a time for giving thanks, and I hope you'll join me in recognizing the many volunteers who help make our Republican Seniors Organization work together. On our board of directors, me, Carol Brumwell, Al Muirhoff. Al, would you stand and come forward, please? Who's our board secretary. Greg Schwark is our board treasurer, and Greg is working with a cane today. He asked not to be asked to the front of the room. We have Chuck Johnson. Chuck, would you join me up here at the front, please? He is our Director 1 for Communications, Committee Conventions. And he also is the key volunteer who does our name tags for every meeting. Scott Graham is our Director 2. Scott is off on a mission trip today. He is handling venues, and he is also a key volunteer for the video setups. Steve Anderson is our Director 3 in charge of speakers. Steve is off retrieving a speaker from the airport. He also works with the World War II roundtable and is retrieving a speaker at the airport for that event. John Butz is our Director 4. He is in charge of overseeing our membership and video efforts. Sarah Amadin is our Board Director 5. She handles communications. When you get emails from us, those are officially from Sarah, even though they are signed by me. So Sarah works a really heavy workload getting us our communications. She is ill today and couldn't join us. She also typically is at the back handling meeting fees. Elaine Loesch is Board Director 6. She's our at-large director who handles the membership. She is very busy at this time of year making sure we receive memberships, that we get the receipts to you, that we track that you are a member and are eligible for that $5 entry fee. She is also our key volunteer for communicating with Congressional District 2 as our connector. And Mike Lehman there at the sound stage is our past president. He is in charge of our nominating chair. He's also, as you can see, a key volunteer with our video. Other key volunteers include Barbara Leonard. Barbara, would you come forward, please? She handles our social media, Facebook and Twitter. X. She also assists Al in providing the meeting notes. Lynn Cardwell, please come forward. Lynn is a key volunteer as a meeting greeter and microphone runner. Don Patton, Don, if you'd come forward, I appreciate it, is our key volunteer for speakers. He's a past chair and he's not going to stand up. Okay, Don. Tom Spitznagel, back there at the back table, come forward, Tom, if you would, is our key volunteer. He handles every meeting role under the sun. When we need something done at a meeting, Tom covers it. And Pam Spitznagel, please come forward, Pam, is a key volunteer. She prefers to do the meeting fees collection role and does it magnificently. Brad Nolte, who is out in our video van, is our key volunteer for doing the live stream recording and production, and we very much appreciate that. We've been doing that almost 2 years now, and I think it has made a real difference in the availability of our meetings statewide. And Patty Piatz, who is also out in the video van, is our key volunteer as a video assistant. John Lillybridge is a key volunteer for video setups. John, are you here? Not walking forward? Okay. And Ron Peterson is also a key volunteer for our video setups. We have a couple new volunteers that just joined us as volunteers in October. Yvonne, come on forward and be recognized. She is serving as a meeting greeter and also a microphone runner. And Lucy Martin, where are you, Lucy? Come on forward. New volunteer as a meeting greeter. Joel Johnson and Steve Weissman are new volunteers. They served helping collect fees and as backup as anything we need for meetings. Thank you for joining us, guys. On our new volunteer roles in 2024, we have, as I mentioned, these representatives to the congressional district executives. And in addition to Elaine and Chuck, Elaine's serving for 2 and Chuck's serving for CD3, we have Judd Mowry, who's serving for CD6. Judd, can you come forward? And David Morissette, who is serving for CD7. David, you're here. I know. I saw you. Come on forward. We had volunteers at the state fair who braved heat and floods to meet our fellow Minnesotans. I didn't get all the names because it was a self-sign-up, but if you would just stand at your place, please, and be recognized for having gotten to the state fair on our behalf. Really appreciate it, folks, and thank you very, very much. As I mentioned, many of us, dozens of us, have been ongoing volunteers for stuffing envelopes for Republican Party of Minnesota at those stuffing parties. If you helped at any time during this year, would you raise your hand and wave? Yeah? Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And finally, we have our convention delegates who went and spent a beautiful spring and early summer days at their own expense, sitting in a meeting all day, and helped us get to where we are in having candidates that were approved, candidates that ran, candidates who were elected. Elaine Loesch was our alternate for CD2. Ted Pilara, are you here, Ted? Was our delegate for CD2. Jay Kakuk was our alternate for CD3. Yep, there's Jay. Chuck Brusvin was our delegate for CD3. Are you here, Chuck? Nope, okay. Bob Collis was our delegate for CD5. Are you here, Bob? Don't see him. Scott Graham, who I said is off on a mission trip, was our delegate for state convention, and Jay Kakuk also attended state convention on our behalf, so served twice. Steve Anderson was our alternate for State Central, and Don Patton braved the State Central meetings three times in the last 2 years, has another one coming up in December. Thank you, Don. Thank you. Those are our volunteers for your Republican Seniors of Minnesota. We are grateful to all of you. Thank you so much.
Don't forget Carol Bromwell. What a job. Who can remember all these names? She does it.
Thank you. Thank you. Remember to tell a friend or neighbor about Republican Seniors. You're our best resource for getting people here to our meetings. We've got extra business cards. I've got some up here, extra ones of our very nice, what we call the rack card. It includes the website for people to watch our videos if they're not here locally or if they're ill. In wintertime, if we have a blizzard, you are okay, you can watch us on video. You don't have to brave the snowstorm. We are interested in having your ideas of who else to invite to speak, either as a short speaker or as a featured speaker. So see me or see Don Patton with those ideas. And we want your ideas on how better to connect people to the political process. We have an opportunity here to gently win people over to our way of thinking, and if we can get people to these meetings, perhaps they will hear something that triggers for them in a positive way. Are there any 30-second announcements that you'd like to make? Raise your hand. Please wait for the microphone. Okay. Here we got Don.
Yes. I want to make one point. The speaker that we have planned for January was going to be the March speaker, Adam Verhoff. He represents the Turning Point USA. If you look at the current statistics for this last election, young people were a deciding factor in many of these elections, and I give that complete credit to what the Turning Point did for this. And Adam Verhoff will be our January speaker. I had to flip January and March, but the graphic showed Jim Schultz. He will be our March speaker. He's actually teaching a law course at St. Thomas, so I just flipped that yesterday. So listen to my words and not the graphic. So thank you. See you in January.
Thank you. Chuck, did you have an announcement? Nope. Okay. Loris up here has an announcement. Hold on a second for the microphone to get to you.
I just have a question for you. The red ball that is coming up, I understand it's the Minnesota Federation of Women. Is the ball itself open to men or not?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah. Very much so. Very much so. We have one more announcement here.
The movie, beginning, I believe, the 20th of this month, definitely the 22nd, Bonhoeffer is in theaters, and I recommend everybody go see it.
Thank you very much. Other announcements? One more at the very back here.
Okay, we just finished celebrating Veterans Day, and in most of our cases, they came and got us, right? One way or another. We kind of had to serve. Some guys later on volunteered, and it didn't go well, especially after 9/11, with the rules of engagement, etc. And I have some literature back here if anybody cares, and I hope somebody does. One of the websites to go on is uniformalphapapa.org, www.uniformalphapapa.org. And they represent a couple of them, and there's actually two lieutenant colonels and a urinating macho who's going to get credit, and one of them is basically would be better off in Guantanamo Bay. So if you care, the literature's back here. Okay?
Thank you for that discreet announcement. If you happen to have yard signs and have them in your trunk, we are organizing a group drop-off at the Recycle Center today. We'll keep the H stands, not recycle those, but the yard signs themselves can be recycled. If you're in Hennepin County, your yard sign can be taken to your local recycling center. They are accepting those, I understand, until the 20th of November. So that it doesn't have to go as trash, it can go as a recycle. All right. I have here the all-important door prize drawing bucket that I can never open one-handed. Hold on a sec. And I know that as these are handed out, you are each promised that every ticket is a winner, but we really only have 2 door prizes. So the ticket ending 0425. 0425, are you in the room? 0425. Did some? Okay. Come and get your door prize, and Al, I'll have you draw the second one. Ending 0436. 0436. Okay, come and get your door prize. Thank you, everyone. You can spend the rest of the meeting talking with each other, celebrating the book table at the back, the membership table at the back. Have happy holidays, safe holidays. We'll see you in January. Thank you.
Republican Seniors of Minnesota. For more information, please visit republicanseniorsmn.com. While visiting our website, you can click on the video tab to watch videos of past meetings. Also, look for other tabs that bring you to our live player and other special video programs. Or on YouTube, search for Republican Seniors of Minnesota.